In today's video, which property types have fallen the most as we approach the end of 2022? That's exactly right. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Toronto real estate market price decline, break it down by property type to see which property types have held up the best and which property types have seen the biggest drop in average sold prices since peak market. That and much more in today's video. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Sam, a Toronto real estate agent working with buyers and sellers across the GTA. You can find my contact information on the screen and in the description box. On this channel, we like to discuss everything Toronto and GTA real estate market oriented, market stats, market facts, building reviews, area reviews, buyer advice, seller advice, tenancy laws, and so much more. So feel free to subscribe, find me on my contact information, and you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok where I post different types of short form content. Anyways, enough of all that. Let's get to the point of today's video, which is as we approach the end of 2022, I wanted to take a look at per average price basis, which property types saw the biggest decline in average sold prices since peak market of the Toronto real estate market, which essentially is February. And based upon this data, what can we learn for going forward? So let's start with detached properties within the city of Toronto, the property type that's probably sought after the most. And as I will get to, which is very important, the property type that has the most varying options available. Overall, for detached properties within the Toronto real estate market, during peak market conditions, detached properties were selling above the $2 million price point, where the average sold price of a detached property during peak market within the city of Toronto was $2,073,986. Now, as of the most recent month we have in full, the average sold price of a detached property within the city of Toronto is at $1,560,000. This represents a 24% drop. And something very important to break down here, the variety of options available with regards to detached properties is pretty vast, because a detached property within the city of Toronto can refer to a side split or older bungalow in Scarborough that can go during peak market around 1.3, 1.4, maybe 1.5, or it can also refer to a two-story brand new built custom property around 4,000 square feet with a double car garage in the Willowdale area in North York, in the Midtown area, or something in the middle, an older two-story property in a more affordable area yet expensive nonetheless, such as Southern Etobicoke, or a very small 1.5-story building in Trinity Bellwoods. The point here is there's a vast array of property types that are detached, both at the virtue of how many detached properties exist, how many types of detached properties exist, and the areas, right? A detached property in North York is not valued the same as a detached property, for instance, in Scarborough. So this 24% drop in prices since peak market can be overstating the matters a bit. Nonetheless, it's not as if in reality it's only like a 10% drop. No, if we were to account for all the different variables, there is no doubt in my mind we would come to a 20% price point drop anyways. And why have detached properties dropped so much to the tune of 24% here? Well, because detached properties were the properties that shot up the most during the early peak market of 2022 within the Toronto real estate market. Out of every other property type that I saw, without a shadow of a doubt, detached properties were selling the highest above asking, the most competition in terms of multiple offers and bidding wars, and the lowest quality detached properties were selling for higher than the lowest quality, for instance, semi-detached properties or townhome properties. But let's move on from detached properties. Let's take a look at semi-detached properties. During peak market, early 2022, when the Toronto real estate market was very hot, interest rates were very low, there was a lot of buyer demand, not enough inventory, so a lot of competition. Semi-detached properties within the city of Toronto were selling for nearly $1,500,000, to be exact, $1,499,000. Now, as of the most recent sales data we have access to, in this high interest market where both supply and demand is greatly diminished, we see a 20% drop in average prices, where now a semi-detached property, you're looking at an average price across the city of Toronto of $1,187,000. And hopefully, as we move forward, you will start to see somewhat of a trend that will be more clear as we get towards townhomes and condominiums. But this 20% drop is obviously less than the 24% drop we saw with detached, but it is quite close. And I've never been the biggest fan of semi-detached properties. If you're a client of mine who's bought or sold with me, you know this for a fact. Of course, this all depends on area, which type of properties, because there's a lot of good quality semi-detached properties available in good areas. But overall, I have always found semis to be a bit overrated from the buyer's perspective. But nonetheless, during peak market, when you really look at it, semis were selling for what detached properties are selling for right now on an average basis, once again, and that's very key. That is to say, if you were to wait for 6-8 months as the Toronto real estate market starts to cool down, instead of buying a semi at 1.5, and keep in mind, this is averages, right? Because some people bought semis at 1.7 clearly, and some people bought semis at 1.3. The point here is, instead of buying a semi at 1.5, you could have waited to the point we are at in the Toronto real estate market as of now and bought a detached for 1.5. Now, of course, this is a very simplistic view because maybe a semi you bought at 1.5 was much more refurbished and renovated as opposed to the detached you would be able to buy at 1.5. Once again, this comes down to particular areas because Toronto is a vast city, but there is no doubt the numbers do not lie. Semis at that point in time were severely overvalued, and once again, the price decline here represents as such to the tune of 20%. But let's move towards townhomes, because as we assess townhomes, where we saw the average sold price of a townhome during peak market across the Toronto real estate market being $1,131,000, that represents a 12% decline, because as of now with Toronto Townhomes within the Toronto real estate market, the average sold price has dropped below $1 million at $995,000. And hopefully here you're starting to see the trend, because detached properties saw the biggest jump during peak market. They also saw the biggest drop now at 24%. Semi-detached properties saw somewhat marginally, minimally, the second biggest jump during the peak bull market. And townhomes, as we see now, have seen only a 12% price point drop, 8% better than semis, and of course, 12% better than detached properties. Don't get me wrong, townhomes are obviously still down at 12%, so it's nothing to celebrate. Clearly, property values for townhomes across the city of Toronto are down. Now, the fact that the average price point right now as it stands for a townhome is below $1 million within the city of Toronto should not mislead you, because there are truly some townhomes that are still selling around the $1.2, $1.3 million price point, but those are very luxurious townhomes located in very prestigious neighborhoods in some of the most wealthiest communities, such as for instance Bayview in Eglinton, parts of Forest Hill, certain pockets in downtown Toronto. At the end of the day, we are dealing with averages. Nonetheless, the 12% drop compared to the other two property types we've discussed so far is pretty decent, yet not desirable. However, the property type that has gone down the least within the Toronto real estate market is the one we haven't mentioned thus far, which is obviously condominiums. That's right, condo properties within the city of Toronto and the Toronto condo market are, of course, obviously down as well. When we take a look at peak market condition, we see that in February 2022, the average sold price for a condominium was $822,000 across the city of Toronto. Now we're looking at an average of $734,000. That is a price decline in percentage point of about 10%. Now, in previous videos, if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, especially my most recent video, I made mention that unlike other property types, the real peak for condos was in March, not February. But for this exercise, we're going to use the February numbers, although technically it was not the peak of the condos, because for all the other property types we've discussed so far, the peak was in February and not March. Condos are the exception, but it's not as if these February numbers are far off from the March figure. Still relatively close. But yeah, we obviously see that condos have held up the best, although yes, they're down 10% in average price point. So once again, less than ideal. But in the first place, condos went up the least. So it's not surprising, especially in contrast to detached, what went up the least is now gone down the least. And in the case of detached properties within the Toronto real estate market, what has gone up the most during peak market with regards to detached now has gone down the most. And there are other reasons as to why condos have held up the best. For instance, condos generally in any given market have a very strong price floor because they're already the cheapest and most affordable property class that exists anyways. In a market such as today, where it is a high interest market and a lot of buyers' borrowing powers are diminished, the buyers who still remain tend to flow downwards towards the lesser options, the lesser property classes in terms of average sold prices. So this further fortifies the price floor, the strong resistance on the floor side of things for condominiums. In other words put, condos tend to be the most resistant towards downward pressure from the market. And as a result, this is why we see condos have dropped the least to the tune of 10%, which once again, of course, is a 10% price decline. It's not ideal, but without a doubt, they have held up much better than any other property type. Now, if we were to break down Toronto more specifically, as I did in my most recent video, then we'll see different figures. Certain areas are down 20%, certain areas are down 8%, but for the purposes of this video, I think it's adequate. Anyways, as always, if you have any further questions, feel free to comment them or get in touch with me with my contact information in the description box. As always, thank you very much for watching. I have this very cool video coming out where I'm going to go through a list of Toronto condos that I don't want to spoil, but it's going to be a very interesting list of Toronto condos, and I'm sure a lot of people will like the video. So look forward to that video. I've been working on that video for a long time in terms of the research part of it, so I'm happy to be shortly releasing it in the coming weeks. As always, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you.